Channel Island. It's Monday, so of course you've got me, Sarah, and I hope you guys have enjoyed the sunshine. It's been really wonderful. If there's not that's not going to put a chirp in your step. I don't know what will. I think given the news cycle, we all need a bit of a bounce in our step. But I'm joined with the amazing Noffel. How are you today? It's good to have you.
Thank you. I'm doing good. Like you said, just enjoying the weather. So I hope everyone else is as well.
Yes, I hope so too. But I'm really, really excited to have Noffel and his valuable insight. And today's stories are more right wing violence. Right wingers lie about Democrat killer. Every accusation is a confession. Israel uses hospitals as military bases. And will justice be served? Labour are due to launch a national grooming inquiry. As always, though, remember to like the stream. And if you're not a subscriber, then please hit that button. We get into your comments at the end of the show. So make sure you're busy in the chat so we can comment on those later. But on to our first story. On Saturday the 14th, two elected Democrats were shot in their own homes in what officials are calling a politically motivated assassination. Melissa Hortman, Speaker of the Minnesota House, and her husband Mark Hortman were shot dead at their home in Brooklyn Park, Minnesota. Just hours earlier, State Senator John Hoffman and his wife Yvette were shot in their home. Both survived, but only after emergency surgery. According to Tim Walls, this is an act of targeted political violence. This tragic event is one that sparked national mourning and outrage. But what else did it spark? Can you hazard a guess? Think about the rustling of tinfoil hats in the background and whispers of conspiratorial thinking emerging from the morbid corners of Twitter. And it shows the right wing disinformation machine kicked in gear within hours. Rogan O'Handley, a right wing commentator with over 2.2 million followers on Twitter, said the Minnesota assassin was a radical Democrat who had no King's flyers in his vehicle and targeted Democrat politicians who voted against free healthcare for illegal aliens. Time to shut it all down. Let's not stop there. Let's look at another one. Shooter confirmed Democrat. Look at that. Twitter's actually a minefield, guys. Honestly, it can be a lot. How about another one? This one says, murdered by her own party, one says. Another responds with, Democrats have no problem offering their own if they fall out of line. Even Musk has something to say, brandishing the left as murderously violent. He said the left are murderously violent in response to someone who said the left kills the CEO of United Healthcare, kills two Israeli ambassador staffers, attempts twice to assassinate the president, doxes, and attempts to murder federal ICE agents and police. And then Musk implying that the left are murderously violent. Let's unpack that, shall we? Sorry, I had a bit of a brain fog. Forgive me. Let's unpack that, shall we? Who was the assassin? Who was this guy? The suspect, a man named Vance Bolter, I hope I'm saying his last name correctly, 57 years old, heavily armed, wearing body armor, a latex mask, impersonating a cop, and carrying a hit list of Democratic lawmakers and pro-choice leaders. When I'd written this script, he was still at large, but I believe he's actually been caught. But I think the question stands, was he a Democrat? Let's have a look.
We even asked about Mr. Bolter's political affiliations, and David Carlson, once again his roommate and best friend, known him since fourth grade, did say Bolter voted for Trump and that he was a strong supporter.
Sorry, what was that? A little strong supporter of Trump. I mean, goodness me. Look at that. A little MAGA lover. His roommate, David Carlson, confirms he voted for Trump, and public records show Republican registration in Oklahoma. Excuse me. He had a manifesto targeting abortion providers and parenthood, Tim Walls, and other Democrats. A hit list that screams far-right grievance, not leftist ideology. No evidence actually ties him to radical democratic groups or Antifa. He wasn't registered as a Democrat, nor did he campaign for progressive causes. All credible indicators, whether that be writings or statements or affiliations, point right. Trump supporter, Christian nationalist, and violently anti-abortion. Novel. I kind of just want to get your thoughts on all of this. I don't know if you'd seen Twitter after everything had happened, but what do you make of the fact that the suspect was a registered Republican, yet much of the right wing media ecosystem is pushing a false leftist narrative? What does that say about their strategy in moments of crisis?
Well, we already know post 2016 there was a concept being flown around called "we live in a post-truth world," right? We had the Brexit campaign, which had a bunch of lies, and we had Trump's campaign, which basically his first term basically talked about fake news, right? And so we already had the idea where media companies were following speculation and these fantastical theories because it made them a lot of money. So we already have had that for nearly a decade, right? Now, fast forward to Elon Musk buying up X. Yeah, the value tanks. However, he's successfully turned it into a vessel of misinformation. And this isn't just nationally, right? So we have had this shooting. We had the United Healthcare CEO shooting, which you saw the tweet mentioned by being a leftist. The guy was Luigi Mangione. He was quite fond of Peter Thiel and these big technocrats, right? He was not by no means like a leftist or a communist, quite socially conservative, actually. He was quite a tech bro, a libertarian tech bro. However, that doesn't matter, right? Because not only are we constantly told lies about who's committing these shootings, but we're also told now on social media that you can just speculate and say whatever you want because it doesn't matter. You can even make a conspiracy that it was the Democratic Party that went out to kill these two. I mean, this is absolutely insane, but it's not irrational by any means because it is what the media serves to do, right? It's like Chomsky says, it's about the idea that the top priority of a media company, the big donors, the big players, whether that be Fox, even you can say CNN, whoever, is to make profit. And anything else when it comes to accuracy will die down after that.
Yeah, you're actually so right. Something like Twitter being used as a weapon, and it's always being pointed at the truth, but no one wants to really, or people do want to speak about the truth, but there's lots of people on there that do attempt to weaponize it. And I do think Elon Musk is essentially the one that's pulling that trigger. Like he is like, hey, look at this platform where you're not going to be censored, and let's put some really problematic people back on there because fuck it, let's not talk about grief. Let's not talk about facts. Let's not talk about
Yeah.
justice. Let's just make profit. And that, I think this is the issue. We've got these tech bros really, really spearheading a very, very harmful movement and this coordinated like disinformation blitz essentially that's like coming at us in full force that is led by very, very big right wing influencers like that Rogan guy. I was looking through
Yeah.
his profile. I was like, you've got 2.2 million followers, the influence you have. But then on top of that, it's amplified by algorithms and greenlit by the richest man on earth. Like so, it's a frightening prospect. And I kind of want to like unpack the whole, you know, people say that both sides are radical. Like we saw people throwing out the term Antifa. I mean, I find that people attempt to use that as an insult. It's quite interesting, but or they use that you're a commie as an insult. But they say both sides are radical. But when we look at the actual data on political violence, the trend is overwhelmingly right wing. It points
Yeah.
right. So why is the reality so hard to confront in mainstream discourse?
I think you raise a really important point, right? Because for the low propensity voter, as in the guy that doesn't keep up with politics, if you are already engaging with right wing news, right, then to you the reality you're presented is it is the left that is violent, and actually everything and the structures that the right and the Republican institutions and sometimes even democratic institutions build up is always one of common sense, one of truth, and basically a strongman image. And it's not just American; it's also British. So, for example, when we had, the ANC fighting under Nelson Mandela, Thatcher condemned him as a terrorist for ages, and you had conservative students going out their way to have Hang Mandela badges, right? And it was propagated that the idea of fighting apartheid was actually a terrorist solution, even though the ANC had extremely low civilian casualties for a somewhat guerrilla warfare group, right? So even in the idea that two sides are both violent, it's gone now to one side is uniquely violent And the structures that perpetuate the misinformation that the Republican Party especially is very keen on doing in order to, stay away from their economic failures, it's alarming. And just one thing on top of that as well, I want to add, um, you are seeing a bit of a shift from right wing content creators and conservatives such as Ben Shapiro or Charlie Kirk, and they are getting worried now because there is a certain point where the violence that's exacerbated by Republican goals, such as accepting massive amounts of donations from evangelical Christians to keep the idea of Judea and Samaria and Israel as a state heavily armed, it's falling apart, especially with what's going on in Palestine with the genocide and also with Trump's questionable links. I mean, I'm sure everyone saw as well. I mean, Elon Musk had put out something to do with Jeffrey Epstein and Trump being involved at a party. So it is getting to a point now where the political populism that you're seeing within the US has got conservative influences afraid, because you have all these massive amounts of capital which can say that a certain group of people are violent or more violent than the other side. However, it comes to a point where you can't deny the political reality on the ground, because most Americans simply don't support Israeli violence as much as they did post October the 7th.
Yeah, honestly, really great points. And it's interesting as well because I think what you're pointing to is that it's almost hard to confront like the fact that, you know, I mean, the whole like both sides are radical. I think it flattens the terrain, but it's also hard for people to confront, because what it would do is it would force people to admit that right wing extremism isn't something that exists on the margins or isn't a fringe, but it's actually something that's even embedded in structures, the structure of power itself. And when you were pointing to someone like Thatcher, who was criticising what was happening in South Africa and criticising Nelson Mandela, we're seeing people existing within these structures basically reiterate these power imbalances. And I think the data in and of itself is something that is unignorable. It's something that's undeniable. It's something that is unambiguous. And when you see let's use the ADL, for example, studies done by them, studies done by independent watchdogs literally do show that the US alone, on its own, has like 75% of its political violence is right wing. Or has been from right-wing actors, whether that's white nationalists or militia groups. So there's a real cause for concern there. But I think the reason that truth doesn't break through in mainstream discourse as of yet is because it indicates more than individuals. And you were mentioning the whole like the capitalist structure and like the power structure. So I completely agree with you. It means actually confronting Silicon Valley platforms or I don't know, police forces, newsrooms, or sitting members of parliament that have allowed for that violence to proliferate and grow in the way that it has. So yeah. Sorry, I ranted a little bit.
Right. No.
But it's true. I mean, the radical left aren't storming synagogues. They're not plotting assassinations or banning books. They're radical writers. And I think until the mainstream can see that clearly, then we won't be getting anywhere anytime soon. But I will move on to our second story. Let's talk about how Israel is preparing for war, not just on the battlefield, but underground. The Sami Offer Fortified Emergency Hospital at Rambam Healthcare Campus in Haifa is a 3-story, 2,000-bed underground complex. Normally, only the first 2 floors operate. Now the third, housing 700 beds, is being rapidly outfitted with power, water, air conditioning, plumbing, communications. Built after the 2006 Lebanon War, this hospital is designed to survive missile attacks and treat civilians and soldiers alike under bombardment. This is all being fully activated by the order of the IDF, surprise, surprise, so the facility can function independently. But here's where the contradictions hit. There was a viral clip that emerged on Twitter, aka X, sorry Curtis, that shows IDF soldiers operating inside a hospital, the same Rambam complex. Let's have a look. Yeah, Yeah, I mean, while it may be legitimate treatment of wounded soldiers, I think it raises a very simple question. How is this any different from what Israel actually accuses Hamas of? For months, Israeli officials have claimed that Hamas uses hospitals in Gaza as military bases, justifying strikes on medical infrastructures. Yet here we have Israeli presence, military presence even in hospitals, military installations embedded in Tel Aviv, and a fortified wartime hospital treating soldiers. I mean, am I the only one who can see the irony here? This hypocrisy isn't new. You've got rights groups, AP, Breaking the Silence, that have documented Israeli forces using Palestinians as human shields. In one case, Jamal Abu al-Ula in February 2024 was forced to evacuate patients from a Gaza hospital and then shot dead by the IDF. In the West Bank, soldiers have forced detainees to clear buildings under fire. Meanwhile, Israel claims Hamas violates hospital neutrality. But Human Rights Watch and the World Health Organization say they've seen no evidence justifying these bombings, describing the strikes that Israel have been doing on hospitals since before October 7th as unlawful. And I think it's safe to say that what we're seeing here isn't, we're not seeing moral clarity. I don't think we have been for a while now. I think when we're watching this news cycle, it's feeling so much more doom and gloom than ever before. But this story in and of itself seems like strategic narrative warfare. It seems like the line between military and civilian infrastructure isn't blurred, it's being deliberately erased. Novel from Al Shifa to Nasser, the narrative has always been Hamas hides behind hospitals, but now we have the IDF in Rambam. What do you make of all of this?
Well, if we take a look at this, for most people, knowing about Israel's actions, which is after October the 7th, really, um, it's a genuine surprise for a lot to see what was known as defending Israel from the very beginning and what now just seems like pure excuses. And I think slowly a lot of people are realizing that every single major person that was the head of October the 7th is dead now, right? They got Sinwar, they got the other heads of Hamas, they got even some of their major convoys, right? They got everyone uh, in that main upper circle and they got everyone beyond. So anything that looks like just disproportionate military violence now, for most people, they can easily tell that Israel has gone far beyond what's necessary. The other thing is, because I was talking about this in the frame of October the 7th, Israel's always been like this. And for most people, it's now a surprise. Now, over the weekend, I'm sure a lot of people saw Iran launched its retaliatory strikes to Israel's preemptive strike on Tel Aviv. And what was really interesting, which a lot of us didn't know, I personally didn't know, I found out about this for the first time, but when Israel talks about the casualties in Gaza basically being due to urban warfare and a tight, densely packed area, the IDF's HQ is in the middle of Tel Aviv, and it's surrounded by civilian apartments, museums, and different institutions. Sorry, I thought that Gaza was a densely packed urban area in which most people couldn't build up proper infrastructure. However, in Tel Aviv, it seems like it was almost deliberately done. So, what looks like a democratic society which values civilian casualties and is the most moral army in the world. Netanyahu has had to now say it's one of the most moral armies in the world, so even that goalpost has clearly shifted. Seems like that mask is slipping really quickly, and I don't think they can keep it up for much longer because it is pure hypocrisy. Everything from human shields to Hamas do not care about civilians to Palestinians are terrorist supporters does not work anymore, because actually what we're seeing is Israel's projecting that image onto the Palestinians for the world stage, while they know that America provides them with the umbrella of internationalist cover, so Bibi is not in The Hague.
Yeah, really, really, really excellent points. You're so right. This is not new. This is not new at all, which is why I brought up the story that emerged from 2020. I think he was murdered in 2024, beginning of 2024, before October 7th, where the video is actually so like it's horrific. It's frightening the way that Jamal had been brought into hospital, like in like with his hands tied, and then they made him suffer in the way that they did. We've seen Israeli soldiers, we've seen the IDF, we've seen the Israeli government operate in this sort of way with like no shame in their game. They're like, look, hey, look at what we're doing, but oh, mate, what we're gonna do is we're gonna just like woe to us. And this is a textbook case of like colonial projection. The occupier doing exactly what they accuse the occupied of. But what Israel have is global impunity, and that's what scares me on this platform. So when we look at Israeli soldiers operating inside of Rambaba Hospital in Haifa, not in a war zone, not under siege, it's in a fortified, ultra modern underground hospital built for military, civilian, dual use. It's like, you know, there's no outcry, there's no headlines, there's no accusations. The IDF using hospitals, just absolute silence. But the minute that they're bombing medical infrastructure, they're like, yeah, but Hamas soldier was there. A Hamas soldier was there.
Yeah.
And there was this video that emerged. I saw it this morning before I went to work, where a Sky News journalist. I wish I'd saved it because I wanted to analyze it a little bit more. But a Sky News journalist was having an interview with like some military personnel from the IDF. Out, sorry.
Sorry, I didn't quite catch that.
Yeah, there was a Sky News journalist that was speaking to military personnel from the IDF and was essentially saying like, well, you guys have been doing this. You don't give people enough warnings. You say that you give people warnings before you warn them. And he was like, yeah, we have. We did it in Lebanon and blah blah blah. And then she was like, no, I was in Lebanon. What are you talking about? And then he actually ended up completely cutting off the interview and said, I don't want to be interviewed by you anymore. And shut off the whole thing live. So what I'm seeing is that this isn't about military tactics. This is just actually about narrative control. They want to control the narrative so much that they will willingly sit out of interviews where they're being held to account. So yeah, I don't know. It's settler logic, I think, and it always
Yeah.
frames as barbaric and destructive and disrespectful. And the colonizers, some elderly, moral, and efficient, and essentially this victim. And I think that's why the same action, a soldier in a hospital gets a war crime label in Gaza, but a PR tour in Tel Aviv.
I think you make a really, really important point when it comes to the imperial logic behind this, right? Because it is about narrative control, as you've said. But as we've seen with other imperial European projects, it is also about setting up a long-term idea of what the place that you're settling looks like. Now, if you take a look with Australians, where the original settler colonialism really was happening, with the Aboriginals being displaced by the Europeans, there was a cultural idea which still prevails now, and I'm sure a lot of people hear it, that indigenous people were savages, they were killing each other, Europeans came and they colonized and they settled, but they worked the ground up and they built it up, right? And the same thing that's basically being used in Gaza and in Palestine is the long-term idea of the Palestinians don't really want peace. They are a savage people. They hate us. They hate us because we're Jewish. And it was actually Arabian conquest and colonialism in the 19th century which displaced the Jewish people, essentially comparing thousands of years of conquest by the Ottomans or by different empires to the Nakba. And it's a very central part of comparing and utilizing the Nakba as actual a decolonial project rather than seeing the Nakba as the dispersing and ethnic cleansing of an indigenous population. And while although, like I've said before, most of us aren't within Israeli society, and so we won't hear about those points, what we are seeing that's coming out for October the 7th and so far is, yeah, a lot of declining support for Israel. However, at the same time, there is going to be a group of people and somewhat of a narrative established that Palestinians are a violent force. And it seeks to not only set up the logic of what Palestinians are like in the short term, but it also looks to set up in the long term because under now and for a long time, Israel will be an apartheid state unless Western powers put international pressure upon them.
Really, really great points. I just want to double check. Can everyone hear me all right? Really great points because I want to unpack everything that you've said as well. And I thought it was really great. They said, yeah, is it
Yeah.
Dalek? What is Dalek? Is that the thing
I
in
think it's the
Doctor
thing
Who?
from Doctor Who, yeah.
So I didn't watch Doctor Who, guys. Exterminate. Yes, I do. You're absolutely right, though. Absolutely right, Novel, and that will be the outcome. I think going forward. I will just say also to the audience, I'm not very well, so I don't know if I sound Dalek because my vocal cords aren't just there, but who knows? But I have another question for you, Novel, because Israel, there was this point about hospital neutrality, that Hamas violate hospital neutrality, and I kind of want to like unravel that a little bit more when we have the IDF that are turning hospitals into military zones and they're tearing through refugee camps, and building underground bunkers in cities, can there actually be such a thing as neutral humanitarian spaces under an occupying power?
Yeah, I think it's a really good question because at the heart of it, Israel is a settler colonial state, and what it looks to do is expand its territory, not just internally, but externally. In Syria alone, Israel now have about 30% of their water infrastructure controlled. If Israel had it its way, like any other empire, it would take over half the world tomorrow, and it'd reclaim the British flag, but with a blue and white one with the Star of David, and claim it's a Jewish homeland, right? When it's actually just a Zionist imperialist force. And yeah, I think you're right. I don't think there can be a neutral ground. I mean, I don't think it's necessarily neutral to surround Gaza with the Gaza Strip with a bunch of surveillance probes by saying it's a neutral ground. And I think this all is an amalgamation of the complete failure of us as a nation and America as a nation to actually put sufficient pressure on Israel. Because had we actually do that, we would be looking at a completely different state. Maybe we would see a progress to a two-state solution without the need for resistance. Right now, that may sound a bit utopian, but we haven't really put enough pressure. And I just want to make it very clear: the idea often gets spun around that Israel is control of us, but we are very much in control of them. If the US called Israel tomorrow and told them to hand over every single hostage they'd got from the West Bank from October the 7th to now in exchange for the hostages that Hamas took, they would basically be forced to do that. Trump already went directly to Hamas to get hostages. Trump also directly went to Hezbollah to get certain deals, cutting Israel out of the deal. So that's genuinely how powerful Western nations is when it comes to providing a true, meaningful, neutral force which provides Palestinians with a space to live in dignity and build up their indigenous homeland, along with stopping a crazy onslaught of what is now going to be remembered for the last almost 2 years now as babies with limbs missing and mothers losing multiple different children.
Honestly, really, really great point. It's true though. But the West have the capability to create a neutral space, but I the West aren't a neutral actor. They're a structural participant in all of this, and that's the saddest part. You're absolutely right. Like the funding and the arming that happens from these Western countries, the billions that they make in military aid, in arms to Israel is fucking insane. Like billions of pounds. I was having this argument with someone online. I need to stop delving into these online spaces. I'm
These
tired of it. I
TikTok
need to
lives.
TikTok. It's just TikToking in my brain. It's honestly sending me crazy. But so I was like, you cannot justify the billions we've made in selling arms to Israel. And they're like, we needed the money. And I'm like, okay, well, where is it?
Yeah,
Like, do you know what I mean? Like, what the fuck?
yeah, yeah. Where is the money?
Where is it? We still got 3 million people that wanted emergency food parcels last year, and there are still
Yeah.
loads of kids living in poverty, and kids literally can't even sleep in a bed in this country. Like, I'm going off on a tangent, but yeah, the fact that the West is a structural participant in all of this, I think, is something that's so hard to get away from. But I will move on. You made really great points, Novel. Honestly, thank you. If you're enjoying the show, then please like the stream. And if you're not subscribed, then please hit that button. If you want us to grow, then you can head over to turnleftmedia.co.uk/support. And there is a link to our Patreon where you can support us monthly or follow the other link to give us a one-time contribution. Alternatively, you can become a YouTube member for just 99p. But I will I will emphasize, please do not put yourself out. The last thing I want is, oh, Yeah, don't put yourself out. And I just got told by a producer that we're also on Facebook. I don't have Facebook, but to those of you that do, go check it out. We're facing a global oligarchy, and now more than ever, do we need radical independent media? So please help wherever you can. But on to our final story, and this did make headlines. Labour has announced a statutory public inquiry into group-based child sexual exploitation, what the tabloids have long called the grooming gangs scandal. Keir Starmer says it's about justice, but survivors say we've waited decades. It hasn't been happening in a vacuum. This scandal has been fueled for years by racist dog whistles, moral panic, and far right exploitation for over a decade. Exploitation. For over a decade, the grooming gang story has dominated headlines. The 2014 J report on Rotherham alone identified more than 1,400 victims of child sexual exploitation between the years of 1997 and 2013. Similar scandals later emerged in Rochdale, Telford, Oxford, and Oldham. High profile cases often involved groups of men of Pakistani heritage, and the media fixation on their ethnicity birthed the label Asian grooming gangs. But official studies showed this was misleading. A Home Office review in 2020 found the majority of group based child sexual exploitation offenders are actually young white men. This issue became a lightning rod for the far right and anti immigrant agitators. You had Britain First, the English Defence League, and reform rallies. Oh, I think that's the wrong graphic. Yeah. And reform rallies sprang up around these towns after the J report. And in one infamous case, this 81-year-old Yemeni Brit, Muhsin Ahmed, was murdered in Rotherham by white attackers shouting, "Groomer." Research from the Institute of Race Relations also state the point is not to deny that Asian men commit sexual violence. Gendered sexual violence exists in all communities, and cultural context plays into how it manifests itself. The problem is that frames of race and racialized culture are always emphasized and overstated in media commentary and public discourse to the exclusion of others, such as misogyny, rape, culture, vulnerability, and austerity. When Muslim ideology or Pakistani culture are posted as the explanation for child sexual exploitation, this obscures the structural conditions that enable such abuse, whilst implying it is an issue of their community, as distinct from our white community. Survivors say that their stories have been racialized, erased, and politicized. I think we've all bear witness to that. When councils failed to act, it wasn't wokeness that stopped it, it was austerity, underfunded services, and a culture of disbelief. In Rotherham, support services were cut by 33%. And the inquiry's framing and timing raises big questions. Will it truly centre survivors' needs and uncover decades of cover ups, funding cuts, and risk averse bureaucracy? Or will it simply placate critics of one kind, i.e., the far right or the tabloid press, whilst absolving the system itself? For now, I think the announcement brings hope for justice. So I want to focus on that, but also warnings from campaigners. Meaningful answers will only come, I think, if the inquiry resists right wing scapegoating and focuses on the class and institutional forces behind this tragedy. But Noffel, it's hard to speculate with this sort of story or this matter, and I think it's good that it's probably best that we don't. But I think it's been looming for a while. People have been calling for it. But what do you think? Is this inquiry actually a path to justice, or is it a concession to right wing pressure?
We already had a. I'm quite myself passionate on this topic because I hate hearing time and time again that it's about women and children. It's about women and children. It's about women and children. But at the same time, in these circles, when someone's mate, someone's friend does something to a woman, it goes unnoticed. It goes unspoken about, and it's completely ignored or justified. We had riots in Northern Ireland just recently where innocent families had to put up British flags, Union Jack flags, right, to pretend that they're not Filipino and essentially say, hey, look, don't attack me simply because of my ethnicity, right? Because I haven't actually done anything to your women and children. And when I have conversations with these people and say, well, why didn't you kick off for Conor McGregor? The straight up excuses come in. Well, he got a civil case. There's some sort of there's a little bit of nuance to this. So this isn't about women and kids. It's about throwing a community under the bus that has been targeted for being Muslim, for being in enclaves, whatever you want to call it, of one case in which is not representative of a whole amount of people. The Alexis J report, which is the actual report that we had about so-called grooming gangs. I mean, that itself is a term which is incorrect. It's child sexual exploitation, right? She put forward multiple different policies, which if people genuinely really care about women and kids, the people that were affected in Rotherham are still fighting on these policies which haven't been implemented, right? There are multiple different survivors of those areas, or mothers of girls that were targeted in those areas, which say not enough is being done. And so to have another report to possibly focus on ethnicity loses sight of the bigger picture, and it also loses sight of the fact that these sort of things often happen by people within the home, and it often happens by family members that other family members cover up for. When possibly you start to politicize this as a race thing, you're dissuading other real victims that aren't victims of Pakistani men from coming forward and saying, hey, look, actually, I've had this experience. And I think it's very dangerous because on top of that, there's so many things I can go on to, but the main issues, like I keep saying, is misogyny, systemic misogyny, institutional misogyny, the fact that police officers believe that young women are going out their way to do this to themselves. And those things are never really tackled. What's always focused on is protecting women and kids from an existential threat that is coming from outside the borders. But mate, you're not looking within your own borders, and you're not looking at your own families, and you're not looking at your own friends. So I will never buy this as an idea of protecting women and kids. And certainly, I think it will bring political tensions to a group and a community of people that are being scapegoated simply because Britain can't actually take care of its own women at home.
Sorry, I just realised I was on mute. Excellent, points. You have said it so well. I don't think I can say it any better. And I got distracted because as you were speaking, an article came up about Baroness Casey hits out at do-gooders for giving racists more ammunition. And it literally just points to what you were saying. That the rhetoric that people want to go down is to point the finger towards those who are of Pakistani or Asian heritage, because it absolves the system of the things that they've allowed to proliferate. The reason why these things have proliferated in the way that it has, child sexual exploitation, call it out for what it is the fact that a system has encouraged cuts and austerity, and that's why these kids and these women have suffered at the expense that they have. And you rightfully used the Northern Ireland example where the riots that unfolded, well, we're doing it for the women and the girls, we're doing it for the kids, and it's like, no, what do you represent when you're out there doing what you're doing? And so with this story, it says that Baroness Louise Casey's report talks about the palpable discomfort in any discussion of ethnicity. And I think what she's saying by that is they're comfortable pointing the finger at people who come from communities of color, but the minute that this report actually says that, hey, 80% of these people who have done child sexual exploitation are actually white, everyone's like, no, can't be, wrong. And that's when they become a little bit uncomfortable when they talk about race. When you think about the white majority, they're very much like, nothing to do with me, nothing to do with me. And I think it's that us versus them narrative. If they don't resonate with the perpetrators, then they cannot be associated with part of the problem. But the issue with that is, it's like, and I talk about this all the time on TikTok, it's like the "it's all men until it's no men" slogan. That is kind of like saying all cops are bad, although not all men are bad. We know this for a fact, but they exist within a system where they kind of, a lot of them aren't being held to account in a way that is fair, and there's a system that allows for that power to be abused. And I think that's what needs to be pointed at here. And she says, Casey explains that ethnicity data is not being properly collected by the police, the local authorities, or the Home Office. But she looks at the latest data, and to be fair to the last government, they had a slightly better go at it. But she'd said, I think it isn't fair on the victims, and it also isn't fair on Asian and Pakistani communities who are almost tarnished by that, when actually the national data doesn't take you down the route that is
Yeah.
Asian and Pakistani communities that are committing these crimes. So,
Mm.
I mean, what do you say to that? Sorry, I've just
I
thrown
mean,
you.
no, it's okay. It's okay. I mean, I myself am Pakistani, right? So when I take a look at these stories, especially growing up, right, as a South Asian man, you're already put on a certain radar in terms of someone being more likely to commit violence and offenses and whatnot, right? So you already have that. And now a later section of a new generation of young men are now going to be told that you have a culture and ideology which is inherently disrespectful towards women, and on top of that, you have a racialized aspect of Islam as well, saying essentially that you know uh, the whole right wing idea that's linked with Tommy Robinson, because he doesn't just talk about immigration, for example, and he's a big champion of fighting against grooming gangs, right? Also, he says, but he also links it to Islam, which itself now is racialized, which a lot of people don't understand. It's a racialized concept which started in the US. The first man to die after 9/11 immediately was a Sikh man, right? And now it's got to the point where when we saw the different riots going on in Southport and Ballymena, you also, sorry, not Ballymena, in Southport, you're also just targeting random people that are Muslim that aren't even immigrants necessarily, if they just look like one. And I think she's completely right when she hits the nail on the head where she says a lot of innocent people are going to be tarnished by this image simply because there's this prevailing idea that structural violence against women and children doesn't come from misogyny, but it comes from outside the borders, and it comes from mass immigration, and it comes from ideologies which aren't compatible with Western ideologies, despite Western ideologies themselves, so-called, are having a rise in agendas to control women's bodies. Like, reform is literally talking about abortion right now, and no one wants to talk about how that's a control on women's bodies. They were talking about legislating against women wearing certain clothing. It's insane to me. It really is insane to me that the idea of misogyny only happens outside your home is now being put forward as a real threat towards targeting women and girls. And that's why you have a lot of women that say, I don't think Nigel Farage is standing up for me. And I certainly don't think things like this are standing up for me. Like, I'll say it again. There are people that were affected by these cases, and there were women and mothers of daughters that were affected by what happened in Rotherham, and they're still fighting for just one policy to be implemented. And Labour put forward a few, but it's not enough. They're fighting for just a couple more. And the fact that no one is listening to them, but everyone else is listening to agitators that just want to control certain economic aspects, is so disheartening. And it really does not put women on the pedestal that we claim we put them on. It's a complete disservice.
Completely agree with you. Completely agree with you. I literally can't even say that better myself. Like, I think this scandal, the child sexual exploitation, all the things that had happened over those years, should have been a wake up call to everyone who was watching and reading about these stories and following it. About how the state failed working class children, but instead, I think it was hijacked and turned into some racist spectacle that I think has scarred the British Asian communities, particularly for over a decade, and is still continuing to scar them to this day. I was going to ask you a final question, but I feel like you've kind of answered it already because, we saw Musk earlier on in the year basically called Jess Phillips a rape genocide apologist. Survivors actually came forward to back her, but it seems that the far right ignores the structural issues, which is what you've pointed to. We've seen years of austerity and privatization have weakened these social services. So I guess my final question is how did cuts in public services and the push for privatization create the conditions that enabled these predators to operate?
Yeah, well, I mean, first off, is the police are a massive institution, right? That have seen cuts, but themselves are extremely misogynistic, right? What we should have seen, in my opinion, is riots right after the Sarah Everard case, asking why are our police force not actually protecting women, right? Why is it that we're constantly told that neoliberalism and cutting the state leads to efficiency, and these institutions on top of that are efficient, but they fail women every single time, even after their death, which shouldn't be a thing at all. It's morbid. I think it's laid the ground, and I do think it's not just, reform are the main peddlers of this, but it's not just reform, it is also the centre libs which continue to lay the ground running for more extremist ideologies to come in when they're not addressing economic issues, when the public sector isn't being the public sector and protecting its people, people are obviously going to flock towards different explanations. And if you're constantly telling them that it's not economic one and the economy is doing great, then actually logically, even as someone that's affected by this rhetoric, of course people are going to think it's immigrants. If you keep telling them it's not the economy and the economy's fine, then hey, what are they going to think? It's not the economy, it's something else. It's something outside the country. It must be mass migration. And so I think everyone has a part to play in this, especially the liberal centre, because they haven't addressed anyone's concerns.
So well said. I can't even add on to that. Like, fucking brilliant novel. Very grateful to have you. What a great Monday. Not
Thank
great stories, but honestly, great analysis. Let's go
you.
to our
Yeah.
producer for comments. Hey, producer. You're muted.
I don't think we can hear you, Cal.
You can now. How's that?
Yeah, he has to do some little like
Yeah.
fancy thing on his mic, or he's got like.
I was muted and I was like, oh no, it's fine. So I unmuted and then I realised I touched my microphone, so I was muted again. It's always the way. Hope everybody is well. Hello to everyone that's watching along and commenting today. Lots of brilliant comments as always. Bear with me. So, I just want to actually, just before I go to the comments, I just wanted to talk about something on that last topic that I heard the other day. Now, this was actually, I think this first came out in around about February, but I only heard about it a couple of days ago, listening to LBC actually. In the Rochdale case, there was one of the victims, a 10-year-old girl, was labelled a prostitute by social services. Like the failings that have gone on are beyond, all this far right talking points about people being too frightened to say that the perpetrators were of Pakistani origin, or frightened of being called a racist for calling out the color of the skin. This is way deeper than that. There is a systemic problem with the way in which the police and social services and those in authority view young girls who are victims of child sexual exploitation. How anybody within that system could label on an official document a 10-year-old girl as a prostitute is completely beyond me. And if that's on a case file, that's going to have been picked up by other people. Obviously, it's social services that put it there, but the other people that are working to protect this child. And I think the right wingers that are outraged and that keep kicking and screaming about the need to be an inquiry, I think they're completely missing the mark, because the issue isn't the ethnicity of the perpetrators. The issue isn't the fact that people were frightened, allegedly, to act because they were scared that the perpetrator mightn't be white. The issue is that we've got people in social services calling 10-year-old girls prostitutes. We've got police officers who have victims go into the police station with their mums to report the crimes, to report the abuse. And the police take the attitude, oh, she's just a slag, we're not interested, she sleeps around. When we're talking about girls of 11, 12, 13, 14. It's a much bigger issue than this race conversation. And it really, really annoys me when I hear all these people talking about the need for an inquiry when they claim that the issue is race related, when they seem to completely miss the fact that the way in which these victims have been dealt with and looked after or not looked after, is where the real problem lies. And I just hope that this inquiry, which I don't think we need, by the way, that there's already been one.
Yeah.
And then we've also got Baroness Casey's report as well. I think that it would be a much better use of everybody's time to just implement the findings of the Casey report and the J report, and to focus on making the change that's necessary, because we already know about these things. We already know about social services referring to children as prostitutes. We already know that there were some people who were frightened to acknowledge the race and ethnic background of some of the perpetrators. We already know that this was going on, and I don't think another inquiry is going to tell us anything new. And I worry that it will take away from the work that's already been done in the J report, and it will also detract from some of Baroness Casey's work. Although it is worth pointing out that Louise Casey has herself said that she thinks another public inquiry, a proper one, is the right decision, and she is fully behind it. So let's wait and see. But I just hope that the focus is on the actual failings within the system rather than just focusing on the race and ethnic background of the perpetrators.
Yeah, well said.
But yeah, that's just my 2 pence worth for that one. Jacqueline said, "Hi, Jacqueline. Look at the documented abuses going on in care homes and boarding schools. It seems like they use the so-called grooming gangs to distract from that." What do you guys think of that one?
Well, absolutely. It's a systemic issue. It's a structural issue, and I wish people were actually like engaged with that. But they're not. I think even the term, like, just off of that, the term grooming gang really fucking pisses me off, because like it's like what Noffel said. It's become a racialized shorthand, and I think what we're seeing in care homes, in boarding schools, in foster care systems, is that when you use terms like that, you're ignoring the fact that most child sexual abuse is proliferated because systems are allowing for it to be proliferated, allowing for it to flourish and thrive because of cuts, because of austerity, because of the material conditions that people are living within. It's awful. And then the damage that comes as a result of that, amidst all of these systemic failures, is the racialized shorthands that come as well. Black, South Asian, and Roma backgrounds being their experiences being completely erased, but also at the forefront of all of this, victims' voices not being heard. And I think that's what pisses me off. Where are the victims in all of this? Where are they? Because they're not being heard. I feel like they're not at the forefront of any of this, unfortunately.
Yeah.
So
Nuffle?
yeah.
No, I think it's intentional or non-intentional when it comes to focusing on the real causes of this. It's just because of the way the system is set. Like I've said before, like there is also, the moral cases that we can put forward to why people should focus on things. But whether we like it or not, we live in a system, an economy which runs a public sector, which doesn't incentivize actually improving the public sector, incentivizes to go to private contracts, ignore everything on the ground, so people look the other way, right? And until we fix that root issue of actually providing genuine, even like a national child protection agency, which was one of the, in the first, sorry, I forgot who spearheaded it again. The J report, right? That was one of the recommendations she put forward. Unless we tackle those key underlying issues, whether people intend to do good or not, these will be the results.
Axel Crackers has said social workers are in a similar place to the police, in my opinion. A corrupt system makes corrupt people, hence the outward and accept. It's disappeared from the screen. And accept abuse of children, especially girls in care. And I think there is a truth to that, where there is a big problem with. Sorry, I don't know. No idea where that comment's gone. I think there's a problem whereby when these systems are overstretched, and when the staff that work within them, and I'm not making excuses for the failings at all, but when the staff within these systems are overworked and are overstretched, what then happens is you see more corruption, you see more people sort of not acting on things that they should be, and I think part of it comes from a place of exhaustion, especially in cases when you've got you've got multiple cases all happening at once. It becomes easier for people to ignore the problem rather than to face it head on, and that should never be the case. But then why does that happen? What is causing that? And again, I hope that's something that's looked into with this inquiry, because the failure to protect children when you work in a service that literally has child protection in the title, I just can't fathom how people can sleep at night when they know that they were failing these girls.
And I think the fundamental, and I keep coming back to this, is that it's austerity that's crossed child protection. I think many frontline social workers, like you said, were underpaid. They were operating in like really, really gutted departments. So I feel like because of that, it means that they're not trauma informed in trying to tackle very, very complex cases. And how can you possibly protect children with staff who are burnt out, with a shit retention scheme, with slashed services? So I don't think individual workers on the ground are the problem. I think the root cause is that institutional social work absolutely
Mm.
shares blame, but I think that they're unfortunately part of a system that has again allowed for this to thrive in
It's a
the
deeper
UK. So
problem of failures of
that's
our
it.
public services, isn't it? Essentially,
Yeah.
Vicky said anyone remotely connected to real life and actual police should have dismissed the quotes "cops gone too woke" as a pathetic nonsense it was. Even original inquiries said that had nothing to do with the failures. Um, Yeah, and there's a lot of talk about this. You know, we've seen it more in recent years with more of the culture wars, haven't we? People pointing the finger at the police and saying that they're too woke, and they're too busy dancing at pride parades to actually properly police. But again, there's a problem again, like what you've just talked about, Sarah, with regards to austerity in the cuts. I mean, we lost 20,000 police officers under the Conservatives. Now, granted, they put them back, but they only just about got them back. So when you've got public sector cuts happening, and also let's remember as well that again, how many, I can't remember the number, but how many members of the Met Police were suspended on sexual abuse charges
Yeah.
and rape allegations and stalking allegations and the rest of it? Like, it's a systemic problem within the police force as well. So is it any wonder that some of these girls weren't able to get help and support? They go to the police and the police are thinking, oh God, we better not investigate this because I might be caught up in this.
And I think it's such an absurd thing to say, because not only is the police force extremely attractive for people that love to uphold certain aspects of the patriarchy, it's a very patriarchal institution in the way it operates. Like, there's a large amount of people that go into it, and there's studies done on this that are extremely violent and have been towards women and children in the past before, especially the amount of people that have abused their spouse or partner in the police force is extremely high,
Mhm.
right? I think there is a massive aspect of austerity there, but we also need to look at police reform, and we also
Yeah.
need to take a look at overall as an institution.
Mhm.
It's not really set up as a force that is to protect people, especially children. It's set up as an institution that's set up to protect certain laws. And
Yeah.
going back to like the term ACAB, right? And my uncle is an ex-police officer. There are many cops or police officers, whether you live in America or the UK, that go into it, especially like my uncle, that want to make a change and they want to do good, but the system in place just doesn't let them do that. Maybe they have arrest quotas. Maybe they, by the end of the week, they have to arrest a certain amount of people. Maybe the incentives aren't there to actually go down. Maybe there isn't enough funding for kids to protect women and kids straight away. And so, this encompasses, I think, a wider conversation about, what do we want a
Yeah.
police institution to actually
And
operate
and
as.
and it is a wider issue. I mean, Vicky's pointed out, she's clarified that Rotherham happened before any Tory cuts to police, and I'm aware of that. I'm alluding more just to the wider issue within the police service as a whole. Pardon me, which obviously, yes, there are examples where this has happened anyway. But I think that speaks to the general culture within the system. It's a mess. We've had where has it gone? Moth has become a member. Thank you very much
Thank
for that.
you.
We do appreciate everyone's support, like we always say. I know we bang on about it a lot, but we couldn't do what we do without all you wonderful, wonderful people that come and support us and watch our show and interact with our content every day. Jacqueline said the 99p gets better and better value as the Turn Left back catalogue gets bigger and bigger, and that back catalogue is all available for you to watch on our channel. So do that, catch up. There's my report from the Media Reform
Yeah.
Coalition's
I was about to say that.
Media and Democracy Festival events gone up the other day. We've still got an exclusive interview with Sangeeta Maisky coming at some point soon for you as well, as all our other wonderful content. We've been quite busy, haven't we, Sarah?
We have been, and I think it's important to note we do all of this. We have incredible guests that come, like Noffel, and we do all of this on whilst working full-time jobs. So I think it's also worth noting too.
I think we're doing all right, if I may say so myself.
I think we're doing good.
Let me just have a look. Axel Crackers again. We're doing it for women and children whilst harming women and children. This is still on the on that story that we
The
were just talking about.
irony.
I do think when I hear the likes of Reform UK talking about this issue, it does sort of make me sick a little bit. The fact that they were very quick to defend the actions of James McMurdoch when it came out about his criminal conviction for literally kicking his ex-partner in the head multiple times, which he went to prison for. And listen, I'm all for reform, and I believe that people can be reformed, and I'm sure he has been. But I have an issue with members of Parliament holding office when they've got convictions for violence against women. I just think, even if you are a reformed character, great. I'm glad that you've been able to be reformed, and I'm glad that you're able to, learn from your past violent behaviour to know not to do it again. But I just feel like people like that shouldn't hold positions of power. And when I hear multiple times, as it was at the time, pretty much every Reform UK MP making excuses for James McMurdoch on the one hand, and then on the other hand talking about how they need to, there needs to be a national inquiry on grooming gangs so that they can complain and push their racist rhetoric. I just find it quite hypocritical.
It's bound to get worse because they've got a bunch of people in councils now that are looking at doing a Doge style budget where they're trying to reduce certain parts of local council sectors. Can't remember in which council it was, but the age of the guy that's been left in control of the health and social care budget of about £300 million is a 19-year-old with no prior experience. That's the reform councillors we have now. So it's bound to get worse, unfortunately.
Well, it was like when the mayor, Luke Campbell, was saying on camera the other day that his role wasn't a political one. And it's like, you're a politically elected mayor for a political party, and you're saying that your role isn't political? Really? What on
It
earth?
makes sense. It doesn't even make sense. Doesn't even make sense.
No. Anyway, I'm aware of time, so let's speed through. We've got Edward. Hi again. Excuse me. Another Israeli talking point is that Palestinian is not a real nationality or culture, linked to what Nuffel was talking about. Nuffel, do you want to address that one?
Yeah, I think it was tying into really well what Sarah was talking about, which is like certain narratives and certain ideas pushed by colonialism as a whole, right? And I was saying that not only does it justify it then, it also justifies it in the present, but also, in the future, but it does justify it in the past. Because there is this idea within like Western spheres that a country or a nationality is bordered, it's not borderless, and it's based on a state, right? It's the same way that Europeans denied Native Americans identity because they didn't have mass institutions set up and the idea of a nation state. The idea that nationalism and identity is tied to your state and tied to what your government does is a Western Eurocentric concept. Palestinians, while they were living in their native homeland, they just bore the identity of the local town they were living in that connected to a wider connect of an indigenous land. And I think it's a ridiculous idea that an identity didn't exist because it didn't exist how you think. We are billions of people. Cultures will develop different identities. It's insane.
I completely agree with you. You're absolutely right. And it's not just hypocrisy, is it? It's propaganda at the service of apartheid at the moment, and that's what's really scary. We've got Western institutions and Israel that are bringing in this civilizational like myth that we are civilized, that Israeli life is sacred and it's Western and it needs to be protected at all costs, and that Palestinian life is chaotic and it's violent, it's barbaric and it's suspicious. So therefore, always need to be speculative of it. And I think until we actually start calling that out, we'll keep watching hospitals burn in Gaza while bunkers open in Israel, and the world will still keep calling it defense.
Yeah.
It's irritating and it's frustrating.
Yeah. Martin said, IDF always use human shields wherever they are. Every accusation is a confession. I thought it was very telling. I know that we've not covered this situation with Iran tonight, but I'm sure we will in the days to come as it escalates. But I say as it escalates as if I've got knowledge that it will, but with the way things are going, I'm sure it's going to before it dies down. But it was very interesting watching some images the other day of after when Iran sent the rockets into Tel Aviv, which was in retaliation to Israel firing rockets at some of the infrastructure in Iran. They claim that it was because they're concerned that Iran have got nuclear weapons or are getting close to creating nuclear weapons. But anyway, when Iran retaliated, what was really interesting was there were videos from Israeli citizens and civilians in Tel Aviv who were filming out of the bedroom windows of their apartments as the Iranian rockets were coming down around them, and literally almost in the back garden of these apartments, rockets were being launched from Israel to take down the rockets that were coming in from Iran in the sky. Now, if that was happening in Gaza, Israel's immediate statement on that would be, well, why are Hamas firing rockets from the middle of civilian populations? So I asked that question to Israel. Why have they got rockets stationed in the middle of civilian populations?
You asked that
Okay,
question to Israel.
say again. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah, why have Israel got rockets in the middle of civilian populations?
Yeah.
And like, look, it's awful what happened. I think that when the last I checked, it may be more now, but I know that particular set of strikes, I think it was 8 Israeli civilians that were killed as a result of that strike. And any civilian casualty is one too many. But we do have to ask, why are Israel positioning rockets in the middle of civilian areas? Why are Israel using hospitals in the way that we discussed earlier? Why is it that they have all their comms stationed on top of blocks of flats in Tel Aviv? All these examples where Israel are using people and civilians as human shields, yet they want everyone to be outraged that Hamas do the same thing. It's like, well, from where I'm looking at this point, they're both as bad as each other for it, and it's really driving me around the bend now, the hypocrisy and the double standards. Sorry, Nofal, I know you might have wanted to talk on that, but we do need to move on.
Sorry.
Where I'll just do these two quickly. So this is just in regards to the first story, Jacqueline again. We probably won't find out what his motivations are until the trial, and maybe not even then. And of course, it is worth pointing out that there will be, there is an ongoing case there that's been investigated, but I'm sure we'll report on that when we have more. And Edward's saying, I like being called Antifa and Commie as badges of pride, to be honest. Sorry, I take being called. It does make me laugh when they say, oh, it's bloody Antifa. And it's like, so are you anti-Antifa then? Like, are you
Like,
pro-fascist?
are you pro-fascist? Like, make it make sense. It makes no sense when people try to insult me and they're like, "Oh, well, you're just a lefty loony, you're a commie, you're Antifa," and I'm like, I'd
Yes,
rather be
Sam?
called that than be called some fascist. Like, come on, please. I
And
mean,
surely it aligns with, if you're a right winger, surely, or even a fan of the state, surely it aligns with nationalism, because that was the ideology we allied with in World War II. So
literally,
surely it was a good thing, right?
Yeah.
truly.
Yeah.
Yes, but common sense isn't so common. And just before I go, two things. Guitar Guy, you were right the first time, Sarah. It is called Twitter. It is called Twitter. I will stop using I will stop calling Twitter when Elon Musk acknowledges his daughter that he keeps referring to as dead. And comment of the day from Andrew: Nuffle has such well-conditioned hair.
Yeah, you do. Drop
Thank
the
you.
hair care routine.
It's my mum's tresemme. That's literally it.
Tresemme.
That's literally it. Sorry, it's nothing spectacular.
And on that wonderful exclusive from Nuffle there, I've been Callum, and I'm going to drop back down. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Callum.
Thanks,
Always
Callum.
wonderful insight. I know that we got gifted £5 by Border Prince, so thank you, Border Prince, and he did 5 Turn Left gift memberships. And then there was also Graham, always coming through and doing that. So really grateful to all of you. Yeah, Callum will put them up. But I just want to, that's all we have time for. I want to thank Noffel. Thank you, Noffel. Your insight's always so valuable. I'm always so grateful. So thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you.
And thank you to you guys. Thank you for all the contributions that you did in the comments, the monetary contributions as well, and the memberships. You guys are so wonderful. It's just such a great community that we have here. So thanks to all of those that have tuned in. And remember to like the stream. And if you're not a subscriber, then hit that button. If you want us to grow, then you can head over to Turn Left Media to... God, it's happening again, Jim in the comments last time I was with Curtis did a Turn Left Media, and I was like, yeah, I don't say it properly. If you want to see us grow, then head over to turnleftmedia.co.uk/support. And there is a link to our Patreon where you can support us monthly, or follow the other link to give us a one-time contribution. Alternatively, you can become a YouTube member for 99p. But thank you again. I'm Sarah, and I'll see you guys Friday.
Support independent media. Support social justice that's there on social media. Thank you. Turn left.